Hi, welcome. I have to say, this test will be very special for me because when this car hit the market at the end of 2023, I was dying to get my hands on this E-Class. First, I called Mercedes and said I wanted to test the E-Class. Unfortunately, they didn't have any available, so until today I haven't driven this car. Today will actually be my first opportunity, and at the same time I'll be able to hear firsthand what it's like to drive this car. Please join me.
Hi, my name is Mateusz and this is my Mercedes E400e plug-in hybrid. It was a very deliberate choice to go with this particular version. I bought the car new. I've driven almost 28,500 kilometers, about half of which were on electric power. Previously, I had an F11, a station wagon. Then after the F11, and it had a 2-liter diesel, 190 horsepower, the improved B47 engine, I switched. I switched to the G31, the 540D version, and I was very satisfied with that car. However, the fuel consumption in the city was around 16 to 17 liters. Well, it was just a plain waste of both fuel and money. When my lease for the G31 ended, the natural consequence for me was to get the new 5 Series. I scheduled a test drive at the dealership, setting aside the salesperson's attitude, who, when I gave my feedback, like, in my car something is soft, or something is lined with fabric, or something is real aluminum and not plastic, the salesman told me, and I'll never forget this, then please don't look there, or maybe just don't touch it. That kind of approach didn't convince me to buy the car, so I started thinking about alternatives. Honestly, I had never really considered a Mercedes before. After watching a few videos online on YouTube, I started configuring and thinking about it actually in December 2023. And yes, of course, there was no E-Class hybrid available at any dealership in Krakow. They offered me a test drive in the GLC 300e instead. Interestingly, I got it with the battery completely drained, so I basically drove a much heavier gasoline car, but I'll leave that aside. The E-Class was at one of the dealerships in Krakow, but I couldn't take it for a drive because it had summer tires. I'm the kind of person who makes decisions quickly. So the decision was actually made before I even physically saw the car inside. I just wanted to check if it didn't creak. I configured it completely to my liking. It wasn't a demo version nor one that was available in the dealership. I picked up the car in Wrocław, and of course during the first 50 kilometers on the highway, I got a stone chip on the windshield. Fortunately, the damage was minimal, but that incident made me immediately put a protective film on the front windshield. And I absolutely don't regret it. Same goes for the whole front and the doors too. In this color, the sideline, of course, because we're talking about the sideline, the profile of the car, reminds me of the S-Class. In this particular model, we have a 2-liter gasoline engine with 252 horsepower, which is paired with an electric motor with, if I remember correctly, about 130 horsepower. Altogether, we have 650 Newton meters here. Bardzo łatwo dostępny. Because if I remember correctly, the electric motor alone produces 440 Newton meters. Even if the car shows you that you already have 0% charge, that energy is always there somewhere. You have 3 regenerative braking modes, and in the strongest setting, in some situations, you can almost drive with 1 pedal. In highway driving, on average, for every 100 kilometers of highway driving, you are able to gain 78 kilometers of electric range, which you can then use when driving home or entering the city, so it works very efficiently. Mercedes, I think, is the only manufacturer that lets you choose a plug-in with a diesel engine, the E300D. It was already available in the previous generation. There's also the E300e gasoline version, and both of these versions have 313 horsepower. Since I wanted something a bit more powerful after switching from the 540, the ideal version for me was the E400i, because you can really feel those 380 horsepower even with this weight.
Hi! This episode is sponsored by Wehiz.pl. As I've mentioned many times in other videos, and as some of you may already know, on Wehiz you'll find cars at great prices, often the lowest on the market. But their idea of low prices goes even further now. In fact, you can get any car even cheaper. You go to the wehiz.pl website or app, choose a car, and if you finalize and insure the selected model online, that car will be an additional 3% cheaper, and that's without any negotiations. Do you like this new JQ8? The market price is, let's say, 219,900 PLN. However, if you decide to purchase this car online with financing and insurance, the starting price will drop by 3% to 213,303 PLN. And over 6,000 PLN stays in your pocket. But what if by some miracle you manage to negotiate an even better price with the dealer? Then you can go to Wehiz with the dealer's offer, and at Wehiz they will finance the car for you at a price that's 3% lower than the best offer you managed to find.
Why does it work?
Because you get everything in one place, the car, financing, and insurance. It's faster, simpler, fully online, and therefore cheaper. So next time you see a car price, remember one thing. With Wehiz, it's cheaper than the cheapest. The link is in the description, check it out.
2.2 tons. Empty. That's a lot, and I'll tell you, when I first picked up the car and had to brake hard for the first time, I was surprised because I pressed the brake pedal, the car kept going, and it didn't stop. It definitely takes some getting used to, and in the first days or weeks of using it, you have to keep in mind that, again, you can't cheat physics and you can feel that weight. In modern apartment buildings, you might also have trouble getting into family parking spaces because most of those platforms in apartment buildings are rated for 2 tons. So honestly, this car no longer qualifies to use such a spot. After loading it up, you'll easily reach 200-300 with fuel. There's 2.5 tons of actual weight here. As for the battery itself, at the right temperature, I mean a steady 20 degrees Celsius, well, I managed to drive the maximum distance. First of all, the display showed 100 km of range, and I was able to cover about that 100 kilometers. In the current weather, autumn-winter conditions, the real range after a full charge is about 80 to 80-something kilometers. Then, after the battery is discharged, where, as I mentioned, you still have that power. So it's not like the car becomes purely gasoline-powered and only uses the combustion engine, because very often it still turns off, recharges itself, and so on, which also happens, I have to say, very smoothly. On the highway, so at 130 to 140 kilometers per hour, it's about 6.5 to 7 liters. As for operating costs, after the break-in period, I went to Mercedes to change the oil, and it cost about 1,000 zlotys with the filter. Then inspections are every year, and the car shows it, of course, on the computer. And I've only had one inspection so far, and it cost about 2,000, 2,500, I think. That's roughly the amount, a complete inspection. I look at the oil change intervals, and even if the next inspection doesn't come up that soon, I recommend changing the oil. Every 10,000 kilometers in every car, that's what I did and will keep doing regardless of the computer. So I expect it will be about 1,000 zlotys again, maybe less. Maybe I'll be able to go somewhere, not necessarily to the authorized service center, just to get the oil changed. As for issues, nothing serious has broken yet, only the software. There was definitely one service action where something was updated, and another adventure, which in my case lasted about 2 months, was the so-called over-the-air updates. Since July, the car was showing that it had updates to install, but it absolutely wouldn't install them. Unfortunately, not installing this update was blocking every subsequent update. At the dealership, of course, when I pointed out which update needed to be done, what the next update was, and what was missing, because I had read a few forums, watched YouTube, and so on, they said at the dealership that they knew better. Of course, they didn't know better because I actually insisted on one update being done. Then I contacted the company, then later contacted Mercedes through the hotline, and that's where I got the most help because they connected to the car remotely, where they disabled that July update, stating that it was unnecessary because it's more for electric cars. And that unlocked every subsequent over-the-air update, and now the car updates smoothly on its own without any issues. However, what is the moral of this story? If you don't have that kind of knowledge, or you simply aren't that inquisitive, you won't get the help from Mercedes that you should be getting as a matter of course. without digging, searching, or proving who knows more about a given car. So that's just a small blemish on the overall image, not on the car itself. Because it's simply modern technology which can break down, may require updates, or something in the software might just conflict. And that's normal, but I would just expect more proactivity from the service staff themselves. The interior is configured with a super screen, which is that additional display for the passenger. In this configuration, the interior feels more cohesive. Without the super screen, the display sticks out a bit like a tablet, as if it's just attached to the dashboard. Here, we get a uniform sheet of glass. We also have an interior camera, which I admit is absolutely useless, but it's there. You can take a selfie if you want. Mercedes lets you connect something. Connection through Teams and other remote meeting apps, absolutely nobody uses that. We also have a very advanced head-up display, though not as advanced as in the S-Class, and really when configuring it. Of course, I'm not talking about the rear seats and so on. That's the only difference in the front between the E-Class and the S-Class. It's the head-up display and its capabilities. As for the leather, here Nappa leather has been chosen. It's, let's call it probably natural leather. For sure it's the highest quality because there's the basic leather, the Arctico leather I think, which is different, and you can recognize it. That instead of diamonds we have these elongated stripes. And with Nappa you also get ventilation, heating and massage functions, and that's exactly what I wanted compared to BMW, where those massages weren't available. The interior finish is, I don't know if it's wood. Honestly, I don't know if this is wood. Maybe it is, as far as I know. Okay. So it's natural wood with an interesting texture, and that's a basic element. But this texture doesn't require any extra charge. From what I remember, these interiors with those longitudinal metal strips do require an extra charge. Like I said, I wanted a practical interior, so let's be honest, practical means black when it comes to interiors. So I went with this basic decorative motif. We have a touch screen, and that's a big difference compared to the functionality in BMW. I mostly use the iDrive selector, but having only a touch screen for me, let me emphasize, for me, doesn't pose any problem or challenge when it comes to everyday use. Because let's be honest, selecting something like this and changing the air conditioning isn't problematic. You set the temperature once for the drive, it's not a problem. We also have the infamous touchpads on the steering wheel, which were already present in the facelifted versions of the previous generation. For me, again, they're not a problem. They're simple, easy to use. This is the so-called sound system. Burmester 4D, where you also have speakers in the seats. It's really a cool feature. The car is comfortable, maybe not as sporty as BMW. However, with the right setting the car up to suit you, and setting up the seat, which of course has a million settings, side bolster adjustments, inflation, deflation, you can also feel kind of embraced by this car. I'm not saying it's luxurious, because luxury is something you get in a Rolls-Royce. Here it's just very comfortable. I think the materials are high quality, appropriate for this car. As for the automatic lane keeping assist, it works just fine while driving. The corrections aren't intrusive, but where they need to be, they are intrusive and abrupt if our safety is at risk. However, the way the emergency brake works, or the emergency brake combined with cross-traffic detection when the car sees vehicles coming from the side, can be surprising. It can be very surprising, and it's not the way I'd expect these systems to behave from these systems at this level of advancement. Because not only can they surprise me, which is obvious, but they can also surprise someone behind me. We also lose the rear end because the car practically stands on its nose. This also happens when, for example, you avoid a manhole on a single lane road or a pothole, and you make a move into the opposite lane, even if a car is coming from a distance. The car can brake suddenly. Here you have a rear axle steering and the car surprises you when maneuvering. You can fit absolutely anywhere, but here you also have to take into account how you use it, because you might scratch the rim on the curb, the car on the wall, because you're surprised that the car can turn so sharply in such a small turning radius. So again, it takes some getting used to.
My dear friends, it's time for the 2-meter guy test, and I started it a bit unusually because the first thing we did here was open the automatic adjustment settings for both the steering wheel and the seat. I entered 200 centimeters and here I ended up in this spot, and indeed the car adjusted the seat position. So I feel like there's a lot of space in front of me. I have plenty of room for my knees here. But hey, where am I? I can barely reach the steering wheel. Something went wrong with this automatic setting here, because according to the proper way, I should have the steering wheel like this with my wrist on top. And with this setting, a certain problem appears, namely the headrest, which sticks out quite a bit forward. But you can adjust that too, right? You can, for sure? Yes, you can move it back, yes. Well, at this point I feel like the headrest is really far away from me, and the headrest is already raised to the maximum. I feel like I'm not positioned properly, and if I raise it like this, then I run out of headroom. And the best part is that this is the highest and closest steering wheel setting, and it's still too far away. If the steering wheel came out further and I had more space, it would be fine, but I just can't get comfortable with its position. I don't know why. E-Class isn't everything. It's an electric car, and the battery is here, which messes up the whole setup. Not the settings, seat, driver, or steering wheel, just a normal car where everything should be possible, but for someone 2 meters tall, it's not. In this automatic setting, there's even a 220 centimeter option. I'm not sure what that's for. Never mind, who's in the back? My knees have already landed in the driver's seat. Actually in the pretty hard shell at the back of the driver's seat, so it's not exactly comfortable for me. As you can see, I'm not fully upright because we have 2 sunroofs here, which definitely take away a few centimeters of headroom, and the headliner is lower. No matter the justification, I just don't fit here, neither in length nor height. And that's a bit disappointing because this is a big car and I think I used to fit in it before. Why was the new generation supposed to be cozier? There's an extra convenience here. We have an armrest. Notice it's completely uncluttered, which is really comfortable because you can rest your elbow here somewhere. What if we want? Because when we open it, the first level slides out for placing your phone here, and with another gentle click, a makeup mirror pops out here. And now we can unscrew it. No, we can only click it all the way to the end. Anyway, yes, 4-zone climate control, yes, everything is top-notch, but whatever good I say. Everything now is through the lens that, as you can see, I'm kind of sideways positioned here and I don't fit. And that's sad. That's it, I'm offended.
So now we're really moving on to the part that shows the biggest downside of this car, namely the trunk. It's also operated by foot, but it doesn't always work, like this trunk foot control. It's electrically operated. The hinges, of course, retract inside so they won't damage our luggage or take up that precious space. Because Mercedes figured that people probably don't carry too many things in plug-in hybrids, since the trunk is very deep, but it's very shallow. It has, as far as I remember, 330 liters, 350 liters, some ridiculously small capacity, but that's not the biggest downside, because that's just the consequence of choosing a plug-in hybrid, and you have to fit the battery somewhere. Mercedes simply forgot about any kind of fancy conveniences in this trunk. In reality, the first aid kit just slides around because there's nowhere to really attach it. The repair kit is on a string, and that's it. And there are no nets here, just 2 hooks. I don't know what they're for. There isn't even a hook here. It's just bare sheet metal here with no lining at all. And of course you can forget about any underfloor storage because there's a battery there. In the non-hybrid version, the sedan has 520 liters, so this difference is in favor of the non-hybrid version. Forget about taking any longer vacations with 4 people in this car. There's no way you'll all fit in here. When my wife and I go on slightly longer vacations, just the 2 of us, we have to fold the seats down. It was absurd when we went to a friend's wedding with 4 people. Let me emphasize, a wedding. I had to cram all the luggage in, really forcing everything inside, and all the clothes and so on needed serious ironing anyway. The station wagon version is a classic Mercedes station wagon, which looks like a hearse. And the E400e version is not available there. Right now only the 300s and AMG are available. Plus I got a clear and strict ban from my wife on buying a station wagon. After 2 BMWs that we had in the station wagon version, my wife said that now, when we're deciding on a brand new car, so not being at the mercy of the market and what's available, I can choose whatever car I want, meaning a sedan. This is the car I want, according to my wife. While we're on the topic of used cars, I'll tell you that this version is less common than the AMG. There are more E300, E300 are probably about 30 units, and there are a lot of AMGs. You have plenty to choose from. You can pick whichever AMG you want. On the official Mercedes website, in the section with new cars in stock, there isn't a single E400e version.
My dear friends, it's time for a test drive, and we're going to a place where we'll also measure this car's acceleration, because you said it's 5.3 or 5.7.
5.3.
Officially it's 5.3.
Właśnie jest to naprawdę...
We're on summer tires, and I should mention that I haven't switched to winter wheels yet.
But we're not driving on ice, we're not driving on snow. The only thing is, well, it's all-wheel drive. But it's all-wheel drive, which is mechanical too, right? So there's a shaft here, which can handle the total drive force. It's not like just the front is mechanical. I mean, front combustion and rear electric, that's not how it works at all.
Everything here is dynamic.
A standard IT guy, the air suspension really does the job here because it has to. And it really drives like that a lot. Is it still lifted?
Now it's lifted and we can lower it. I just remembered when we were talking off camera about one downside, namely my squeaky seat. So again, the seat. Not only does it lack adjustments, but it's also squeaky. At Mercedes, they wanted to repair, replace and modify it. I decided that in the name of the old maxim, zeal is worse than fascism, I found a way and a workaround. Simply, if it starts to creak, you just need to lift it a bit. Adjust it, go back to your saved settings, and it stops creaking for hundreds of kilometers.
Now we have hybrids. I want to hear when this engine kicks in. In sport, we have to force it on. Oh, now it finally started.
Now it's stiffened, and the suspension has shifted to a completely different mode.
Yes, you can feel that the road has become a bit rougher.
You can definitely feel the differences between the modes here.
The steering system is still more Mercedes-like than sporty.
I'm curious if Mercedes will make a 63 AMG. And here the gearbox also...
The gearbox also switched to sport mode because when the change happened, we noticed it. There's that characteristic jerk.
So here, it does well in that regard too. And depending on the mode, they have different uses. The paddle shifters too, because in hybrid and electric mode you control recuperation, and in sport mode you shift gears.
So let's do the 189 test here.
39. Ja.
The moose test officially didn't work out for us, and that's because the moment I turned the wheels, we immediately lost traction. And the turned wheels kept sliding forward, scraping the asphalt. I still saw that as a positive.
That you felt confident.
That nothing was happening. Yes, so even though it actually lost traction, it still didn't lose confidence. It was handled. And even the electronics, which, as you noticed, are extremely overzealous. Even that overzealous system didn't come to our aid, even though there was actually a slight slip on all 4 wheels. It was there, but the computer decided that everything was fine.
It knew what it was doing.
So we measured the acceleration to 100, and as we predicted, it wasn't an impressive result.
A second behind.
Yeah, a second behind. Instead of 5.3, we got 6.4, and that's a second that was probably lost in 2 stages. The first was a bit of hesitation. Still, during the standing start, because in sport mode the kick is strong enough that the tires were under pressure again and once more didn't get enough grip.
No,
Unfortunately. So here I think the weight of the car really takes a toll on them. And the second thing is shifting from first to second gear, which was kind of strange.
strange. I would say strange because it jumped into second gear.
He shifted from first to second gear and it was like...
It wasn't sure what to do with second gear, whether to keep pulling or not.
And a momentary hesitation.
It was the most noticeable.
Definitely. Yes, which probably didn't cost more than 2/10, but still, everyone on board felt it.
That something definitely happened.
Besides, you have to subtract another 2/10 for the fact that there were 2 people on board, and that adds up to just over 6 rather than just over 5.
That would have to be verified on a dry surface, definitely. Yes, on a warm one.
We have some point of reference. Yes?
We have a point of reference. It's not bad. Again, it's not a bad result, although for me as the owner, it's a bit disappointing.
I have to admit, if someone told me I was getting into a car with 380 horsepower, I would expect a more decisive and somewhat sportier power delivery. Here, whether we're talking about starting from a standstill or about the response.
There's a hesitation from the gearbox, as we just saw again.
Yes, it's a bit more spread out over time, yes. Partly maybe because of those extra 400
kilograms. All this technology adds 400 kilograms. The diesel weighs 1,800 kilograms. Yes, you take an extra 400. I think it was the right purchase. Even without considering that there weren't, I don't know, 10 different options available on the market, I think it was the right purchase for several reasons. It absolutely met my needs. It actually surprised me in many more positive ways. As you heard, I didn't mention many drawbacks, and they weren't anything that would disqualify this car. So yes, I'm satisfied with this car, with this decision, and I would make it again.
For now, you're in a good place. I think that since you're in a good car after all this time and mileage, you are. Yes. You're satisfied and you would still want to buy it, especially since after all this time you know exactly what its flaws are, and yet you still say yes.
I'm able to live with those flaws.
That's the point. Congratulations on making the right choice. Thank you. I'll just say at the end here that this isn't our first meeting.
We met many years ago.
Years ago, and honestly, I didn't remember. Because a lot has happened in the meantime, but once we did a funny project for Autocentrum where we actually rented from Mercedes.
By the way, we've come full circle.
Yes. We got a van from Mercedes and I came up with the idea that we would deliver pizza with the van, showing that it's so agile around Krakow, yes. And that you can deliver pizza around Krakow not only with some tiny car, but even with a big van. And one of the people who ordered such a pizza...
It was me and Zakharov. Zakharov came to the office at a completely different stage of my life, and that's how we met for the first time. I got a pizza. I was, let me tell you, just as happy as I am today.
Alright, I don't have pizza for you today, but I have good news. The car you're sitting in is exactly the one you were looking for back then, and you still feel exactly the same way. That it's the best, most suitable one for you. Thank you again for presenting and for watching this episode. Remember to subscribe and see you in the next videos.
Bye. Bye.